Good evening. I wanted to talk a little bit about one kind of experience that you can have in dissociation and what it's like to come out of that when you're working on your trauma healing and your cptsd and all that. I want to talk a little bit about how being in situations where there's a lot of gaslighting can make it really challenging in some really specific ways pertaining to like cptsd and codependency recovery. And I wanted to share something that I've started trying out here lately that I've liked and want to keep doing as far as kind of reframing your narrative in a specific way. So, welcome to the pacing of these videos. I'm happy to say I'm on like week 2 of not vaping nicotine. I tallied it up how many years I've inhaled nicotine. I don't remember what it was, but over a decade. So I am using pouches because that was just enough of a kind of shift. And so like this is the ultimate cheat level as far as vaping no nicotine and having the pouches for nicotine. But I absolutely felt like I was pulling a fast one on my body last week when I did this. But I don't know, I felt like I was breaking stuff down into stages because I'm able to still like vape and still just like when you're driving like and you reach for the vape, like I can still do that and do the thing. And I can still control my nicotine intake and lessen it because I already lessened it a lot just not having constant access to a nicotine vape. So as far as gaslighting, there were like a couple specific examples that I was thinking of that I wanted to talk about that involves, I think they're both people I work with. Yeah, both bosses, which can suck so much in so many ways when you have a boss that's bad about gaslighting. But I was thinking specifically in terms of how just fucking mentally confusing, and especially if you have any additional challenges like being autistic or otherwise neurodivergent or having cptsd or coming from a history of codependency. It's designed to fuck with you, and it very well may fuck with you, even if you think you're in a pretty solid place, but you're still working on it, which is where I am. Because it's hard to be just denied to your face by somebody about what reality is, and specifically when there's a disagreement about what you experienced. Because it's a different, there's a difference between there being a discrepancy between like what actually happened, like physically happened, took place, whatever. But no one can tell you what you experienced, right? But if you're coming from a history of codependency, I bet you've known plenty of people who did. So there's just a couple things I wanted to share, just like specifically. This is a good example of this kind of bullshit. When I started my last like long-term job that I was at, which I started in May 2021 and left October 2023. I was a bit overweight when I started, and pretty sure I gained a little bit more weight and like got to the apex of that in my experience, and then I lost weight, and I had gained I think 30 pounds, and starting in like 2020 I had gained like 30 pounds, and then I lost 40. And so there were a lot of things going into having lost that 40 pounds. And like the same people, were my bosses the entire time, a few of my coworkers, the entire time. And so they saw me day to day, right? And they saw it as the process that it was. But I definitely like hit a point where it just, the weight loss took off, and I was working out a lot. And I've talked before about how like you hit a point if you're working out and you're losing weight intentionally. There's a sweet spot that you get to that it's just like it's like riding your clutch down a long hill. It's just like, oh my god, I've just got all these reserves. This is great. Like I can just keep going. I'm not going to be fatigued later and shit. And it's great. When you get to that point, you need to start increasing your calorie intake in order to start maintaining your weight rather than continuing to lose it and lose too much and that compromise your ability to pursue strength. Because that's what I did. I lost too much weight. And so anyway, I was at that point. I had completely broken like habitual drinking at that point. That was a big part of that whole change. I wasn't coming home and opening a few beers every night, and I had for a long time. And but instead, like I was finally finding and staying in a good place of moderation for me, and changing my relationship to alcohol, and I was also like starting to get high a lot, like starting to use weed a lot more, and starting to use it very intentionally and very like with the purpose to be in a meditative space, right? And that's how I accomplished a shitload of trauma healing. So anyway, I'm eating better, my mental health is better, I've lost weight, I'm doing stoner meditation and healing my trauma, and not drinking very much, and a big thing that I was proud of was that I started taking working out really seriously in 2023. I started to in 22, but in spring of 2023 is when I like started keeping notes and started like tracking like, and I had like a plan as far as like I'm gonna work out. The first 50 weeks, I worked out 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week. That was the parameter. 4 or 5 days a week for an hour to an hour and a half. A lot of it was stretching, and a lot of it was like rehabbing old injuries and shit like that. So it was awesome to be able to like have that much time to devote to that every day. And I recognize the privilege of it. But I was a few months into that, taking it really seriously and having like really clear goals, and making a lot of progress, making a lot of like healing in my joints and in my spine, and I got to a point, it was around a year ago, I think, and so I would have been 34 turning 35, And I got to a point where I finally felt like I had like healed a lot of just problems in my posture that had a chain reaction. Like, you fix something in your lower back, that might throw your knees out because all the weight-bearing mechanisms and tendons and all the stuff that's supporting your knees, is going to suddenly start being used differently when you change your posture in your lower back. So then I had to take care of my knees, and then I had to address old injuries in my knees that were like coming to the forefront. Anyway, so that's where I was, that's where my head was at, that's what I was doing, right? And I gotten down to the weight that I pretty much maintained for the last like year and a half or so. And I keep trying to gain weight, but that's hard for me. But anyway, the gaslighting example was that the boss who, had been there the entire time that I had been there, and I had been there for a year and a half, 2 years at that point, she waited until late at night and then just questioned me too much about my weight loss. And like kept asking like, "You're nothing else? You're not doing anything else?" And I just kind of got this feeling of like, does she think I'm just going home and doing meth and that's why I've lost weight? Like, is it that hard to accept that like I go home and I'm going to get up tomorrow for day 3 of week, like 35 or whatever? Because like that's absolutely where my head was at. But like that's what ended up being offensive, is like, how come in her mind there is not a version of me that exists that like has a plan and sticks to it and sees progress and continues to stick with it? And that's the part where I like took it too personally and it got in my head really badly. But that's a great example of gaslighting. And then something that reminded me a lot of that happened yesterday at my current job. Excuse me. Last week was Christmas week. I do a lot of pet sitting and dog walking and stuff. Thanksgiving and especially Christmas absolutely fucking suck, because I always get overbooked. In the last couple of years, because I've been doing this for like 7 years, as a, like every single week, I have regular clients and everything. Then I have like my regular vacation clients, sometimes for, I've had them for 7 years. And then more on top of that occasionally. So I got really overbooked. And I wish that I had done a little bit more to change that. And it went smoothly. It really did go smoothly. I did a lot of food prep the week before, just so that I knew when I had time to eat, because I'm having like 15-hour days that I'm mostly gone, and like might stop in for a couple times, and then that was it. And so then it's like, you get home, you get ready for bed, it's already less than 8 hours before I need to get up. I was doing that for a straight week. So I prepped food, and that helped. And it went smoothly. I always worry about getting too tired when I'm driving, because I worry a lot about accidents, because I've been in a lot of accidents. I didn't cause any of them, but I worry a lot about accidents. But I did a really good job kind of just routing everything super efficiently. And, the places that I was going to be going later in the day, I had like the easiest, just no-brainer route. Like there's not going to be anything that is like, oh, this tricky intersection. Nah, it's going to be minimal turns. If it's 5 minutes longer, that's fine. It needs to be minimal turns, and I need to just be able to like... and just, turn left when I know it's time to turn left. Anyway. I put 600 miles on my car in 6 days last week. And so average 100 miles a day. And just fucking everything this year was 20 minutes apart. And in when I really got, like, when there was not a more efficient way to do this, given, like, the timeline of when things needed to happen throughout the day, the most efficient point was still going to be a 40-minute drive, you know? So that's what I did last week. And I had to call off one day. I'd already requested a day off to accommodate, and then I ended up needing to get a day covered, and I'm really grateful to the person who did that for me, because I was just like, okay, for one, like, I would be 2 hours late to work. It's not working out, right? And the other thing was, like, I just needed to fucking be home, and I wasn't up to being customer facing, and I really needed to, like, do laundry and shit like that. So anyway, I went back to work yesterday, and my boss was there, and she already just, you know, belittles people in general, but, like, she's really not happy if anyone shows any kind of, like, exhaustion or boredom or stress or anything, because she thinks you shouldn't be allowed to be feeling that. A lot like my mom. But so she did a gaslighting thing pertaining to all that, and it reminded me of that other one. I was like, I need to just, like, talk about this and get it out of my system, and maybe this will be a helpful example to other people. Because, like, you saw with the first example, like, there ended up being a point within all of that it really did get into my head. And that's what you don't want, right? That's what you want to be able to kind of know how to fend yourself through, you know? And not let it get it to you. So my boss was just already in a mood, and I don't know, she does this weird shit, like she's trying to, like, get me to be impressed or something, and it's just not, it doesn't make sense in the way that she's doing it. Like, I was working in the morning, and she was like, oh, look at this, and she, like, showed me all the reservations for that night, and I'm just like, I mean, if she fucking asked me to work tonight, I'm gonna tell her I'm already working and it's not here and I can't. And then second of all, why are you showing me tonight's reservations? I'm not gonna be there. And, like, that wasn't the point. I'm just giving you some context. But, like, what she ended up doing was she was getting unhappy with me that I was tired and not making a lot of eye contact because I was fending off a migraine and I was really tired, and minimizing my eye movement helps. But she was getting kind of impatient with me and starting to ask these, like, weird, like, prying questions and shit. But she was asking, like, how my Christmas was, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's okay, because, like, I don't celebrate, and I just work. But I told her, like, yeah, I put 600 miles in my car last week, or, like, this week, and she was like, oh, what? Do you have family out of town or something? And I was like, no, it's just, like, my pet sitting clients. I had, like, a lot of pet sitting clients this year. It was too much. And I told her, like, I was going, like, down this direction to this township, and down this direction to this township, and on the east side and on the west side. And she still, like, wasn't satisfied, which is a weird place to be. When you can tell, like, that there's a more natural place for that conversation to go, and she chose not to go there. And that's part of gaslighting. But she was still like, and she was like, did you drink a lot? And I was just like, and I didn't even like I didn't take it personally at that point, because I was just sort of like, oh, because I'm thinking like, God, when would I have had fucking time? And I was like, oh no. And I was like, shit, I haven't drank like all week, because I'm thinking like, oh wait, there's this whole expanse of week behind me. It was so long. I did not drink during any of it. Like, that's the thought process that I'm having. And I was like, oh no, I didn't drink all week. And I was like, and she's like, really? And I was like, which, first of all, fuck you. I drink once or twice a week. And it's like 2 drinks each time usually. But she was asking, like, did you drink a lot? And I was like, no, I haven't drank all week. Like, I haven't had time. Like, I've been getting like 5 hours of sleep every night. And I'm thinking, like, that will fucking explain, if you still needed explaining, why I'm fucking tired. Let a bitch be fucking tired. Goddamn, like, this is not the only place that exists in my life. Goddamn. Anyway. And I was like, no, I haven't drank all week. I've been too busy. And then at that point, I just walked away. I just found something to do and just... and, but then I was thinking about it later, and, you know, I told different things to different people, as far as, like, how my week went, and, you know, and no one seemed to understand how busy I was. The closest I got was we hit a lull, and it was like towards the end of my shift, so I'm just like, and but so was another person that I was working with, so we were just sort of together, and I was like, you want to see some pictures of these babies I've been taking care of? And she's like, yes. So I started showing her, like, oh my god, this one is super sweet and super cool. This one's super great. This one, and then she eventually, I think it got like 5 or 6 animals in, and she was like, wait, did you take care of all of them? And I'm like, we're not through half of them. Like, but yeah, and then I ended up like telling somebody that, you know, I have pretty good rapport with, that, because everyone saw that I was tired. Suck my dick, man, I'm sorry, I'm tired. And, but I told somebody before I left, like, I was like, yeah, you know, she was asking about me being tired earlier, and she asked me if I had drank a lot, and if that's why I was tired. And I was really happy that I saw a little glimmer of like, what the fuck? I'm like, thank God. Okay, cool. I'm not just being in my head, just like, because being in such an establishment for, you know, 6-7 hours, I start getting in my head, at least by like between 3 and 5 hours. I very rarely make it through a whole shift that I feel intact and clear-headed and, you know, centered. Something will eventually just like, you know, and yeah, and it just sets off a whole chain reaction. And I've learned the most important thing is to put all of your fucking energy into not letting yourself go there. It's worth it. Because otherwise, you'll lose 2 hours, and you'll be just in your head griping the entire fucking time, and then you'll eventually come out of it and be like, fuck. Like, okay, like, what sent me there? What got me stuck in my head, you know? I tried something new, and I don't like it. Dude, there's been an awesome fucking storm that's just like steadily increasing in intensity for the entire fucking day. I'm kind of into that. I went to the park today after work because I could, and because I just knew I needed to be in the woods alone and just fucking sit there until I felt more okay. Nikita, thank you. Cats aren't allowed on the stove in my home, which I'm glad I've always been like that, because now for the first time in their lives, I have a gas stove, so I actually do have open flame. So I definitely want you to like have a discouragement already placed in your mind to not get on the fucking stove. The counter is fine, you can get on the counter. Stove is lava, get the fuck off. So that brings me to the next point. That it just, I was thinking about just how shit like that gets in my head. And just how that's how that works as far as like gaslighting and stuff. And that's something that ties in a lot with codependency and cptsd. It's very fucking combative behavior when you're autistic. How are you not being combative? Like, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing with what you're fucking, with just like, you're just like creating this like fiction line and then just like putting all this like emotional drama shit into this fictional thing that you just fucking created, overlaid over reality. And I'm just sitting here watching it happen, but then watching you wait and like cue me in for my response to this thing that you just fabricated. It's openly combative behavior when experienced by an autistic person. Anyway. Shit, that felt good to say. Anyway. I don't think I've, like, thought that specifically. I've known that. I've felt offended. But I haven't, that is just openly combative. When it's obvious to you what's happening, you know? But they're trying to play you like they're pulling a fast one on you. And sometimes you're in a power dynamic because the hierarchies are not good for anyone. And you have to find a way to respond politely while being like, the fuck? Hey, off the stove! Thank you. Stay off the stove, ma'am. Anyway. That's storm picking up. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a very specific experience that I had. And I don't think I've ever really written about it or talked about it. But it's one of those like super pivotal moments, right? And it's just kind of, I have a photographic memory, and like, you know, shit gets either lodged or I take a picture intentionally. But like it just gets crystallized sometimes. I have like certain like still frames of my life that are just crystallized. And that always includes just, it feels like being in that moment. And just everything that, like, was available to me to perceive and to understand and to feel in that moment. I am able, that's my version of photographic memory. It's like, I can just be there. And, you know, some memories just stay really fucking intact. Oh, thank you for being here with me while I drink for the first time in over a week. I've been ready. I like this. I'm gonna switch to beer real quick. I'll be right back. I had to give her the smooch. All right. So there was a very specific how do I even frame this? I have the memory of a specific time where something changed in my perception when I was doing a lot of intentional work on dissociation and on being present and mindfulness and stuff like that. Mindfulness as in, being in your body and aware and connected to your body and all of your senses and to the space around you, as well as what you are specifically interacting with. That's what I think of when I say mindfulness, right? And so I had a moment where something cleared and something it became different specifically in my perception, and I knew that it had to do with all of the work that I had been working on as far as staying present in myself throughout the day and in different situations and in different environments, because that's still challenging. I'm getting to the point where it's becoming, the usual and I just fall into it kind of practice, because you need that. Maybe that's I think that's human in general. I think that's just natural for nature. But I can at least speak for my autistic self, that you have to build the habit until it becomes something and that's what you do when you get in your car or whatever, so I'm finally getting to the point where, because I recognized that today when I went to the park, that I've been working more and more over the last almost 2 years, maybe 2 years in the spring. Just very intentional work as far as trauma healing and being centered in myself, and being committed to no manipulation life, and so this was things changed that day kind of moment. And this was, I think, over this last summer. I was standing, or no, it wouldn't have been this last summer. I think it was before that. It might have been about 1.5 years ago. I was still friends with my last roommate. And I remember knowing that I couldn't talk to her about it. So it had to have been 1.5 years ago. Anyway, I was standing in a client's house, pet sitting client's house. The person ended up being home that day, and it was fine, and I was standing and talking to her in the living room. But what happened was what happened was I suddenly realized I was standing in a whole room. And like I fully like felt and perceived it. And it felt like, it looked like I was coming out of a tunnel vision that I had not had while standing in this living room and talking to this person. So I realized afterwards, I'm like, fuck, it was usually just... And so what I saw was it went from just like that super like tunnel vision focus to I'm standing in a room right now. I don't know if you've ever had that experience of just suddenly your entire body and mind says, I'm standing in a room right now. But I had that. And it felt like when you're on, I don't remember what it's called, when you're on the carnival ride, that like you're standing and you're just held there by centrifugal force, and like it might go up and it tilts and shit like that. But what some of them do is if they start spinning, you start becoming, you succumb to the wall, and I don't know, I'm so fucking relaxed on carnival rides. I fucking love it because there is something, because like even before I started doing any intentional trauma healing kind of stuff, that was something that I understood like later in my 20s, like probably by my mid-20s or so, I realized like, what's fucking great about carnival rides is that I get to a moment where I am forced to decide, do I freak out or do I trust? And when I trust, I just relax and then I enjoy the experience, and the experience is cool, and it ends up being safe because it probably was gonna be. And yeah, that was some cool, like, 10 years ago me justifying my carnival ride fetish as an adult. So what it felt like was when you're on that ride that you're standing and you're held up, and some of them, they'll have like, there was a floor when you walked in, and then it does a thing where it's just like, whew, we took the floor away. The ground is now an additional 4 feet. But it has such an effect because you're already just so centrally overwhelmed. And then the floor goes, and then you're so aware that you're like, your feet aren't touching anything, So it is a really cool bit. But that's what it felt like. Now, my masking autistic trauma-addled brain did not react to any of this. I just continued having as pleasant a conversation as I could with this woman, and then walked away. And then when I was reviewing the files, reviewing the footage, I was like, what the fuck just happened? And that's when I realized, like, I went from like this tunnel vision to I'm in a room and I'm aware of all of it and I'm standing in it. And I was still, I can step inside that memory now, and I can tell now that I was not in my body at all in that moment. I was still just very much, the observer of everything that's around me and happening to me, and the thinker and the person that has to talk, So I wasn't grounded at all, but Anyway. So, I'm a big fan of people talking about just oddly specific, sometimes troublesome shit. Because sometimes it'll just be the exact kind of fucking thing that immediately makes me feel less crazy for what I have experienced. There is a lot of growing up poor in the country with only mentally dysfunctional, ill people in the house. Kind of stories that I'm starting to hear, like stand-up comedians start talking about, just like not funny, just upsetting. And we're just in a format where they can slip that in and mention it. And I'm over here like, oh, it wasn't just me. Doesn't that make you feel so much less crazy when you know that you've experienced shit that you can't talk about because people will freak out? I'm okay. Baby. My allergies, your allergies, all the allergies. I know. I love you. Mm-hmm. We're gonna cuddle when I'm done with this. I felt so bad because I've been home so little this last week, and it's not good for me, but it's not great for the cats either. And then I have the audacity to be coming home smelling like 6 other cats, and I'm doing the high bye on my own. Ooh, I might need to blow my nose, actually. I, dropped. My voice dropped a little bit after those sneezes. Shit. Oh, I wasn't gonna make you watch me blow my nose. Nobody needs to watch that. Anyway. So hopefully... that dissociation awareness of the dissociation, coming out of the dissociation, hopefully that was helpful to somebody. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, I'm trying to start getting more thematic. I'm sure I'll still do the gay white country boy rambles, because I gotta. But I'm trying to do more videos that I feel are a little bit more respectable on a more grand scale. And because I start mentioning that I do this very, very occasionally, and people are like, "Oh my god, you podcast!" And I'm just like, I am experimenting. I don't consider anything that I've done so far a finished product. I'm still testing it out. I want to have a good long walk in this creek before I decide how I do it. Anyway, but I'm trying to be a little bit more thematic and a little bit more organized, and I was finally like, man, I kind of want to do a video, and I really want to talk about this, and I kind of really want to talk about this, and I kind of want, is there a way that I could tie a nice round number together of points and see what happens? This is the longest video that I've done. Holy shit, this is 45 minutes. And I'm not done! But I bet my mind's going to feel so quiet once I'm done with this. I'm going to lay on the floor and meditate for a bit. I've started doing that. A little bit more, not every day, but I'm trying for every day. There's just, for me, there's just something super fucking grounding about just laying on the fucking floor. And You have a variety of positions. You can be kind of stretching while you're doing it. You can have your feet on the floor so you feel like grounded in your soles, and you're also like, making sure your lower back is relaxed if you do that. And just fucking meditate for a little bit. It always brings me to a better place. It is always worth it. So something that I've recently started doing is, I'm trying to, I'm doing another revamp for the self-talk. Those revamps, started when I was like 21. I still, there comes a time, there will come times where you just gotta sit down, you're like, my life is different, I'm different, and just, your age changes. If nothing else, you have to realize at some point, like, hey, I'm not 25 showing up to this anymore, I'm not 16 showing up to this anymore, I'm not 40 showing up to this anymore, whatever. Or, the flip side, like, shit, I'm mid-30s. What's that supposed to be? That's where I'm at. And I'm starting to be aware of impending 40s. Can you hear the denial? Can you hear the resistance? So something that I've started doing is, and not often, but I want to try to make it a habit and see what comes of it. Big fan of just saying things super clearly with words. Just, describe what it is, even if it's just in your mind. I read a post of a, excuse me. I read a post of a, like a psychologist on YouTube, I think, that focuses on the adults of childhood abuse. And I don't like saying adult survivor. It's just like, you're going to get, the childhood is a transitional phase for everybody, and then everybody is an adult for the rest of their lives. So it's like, I don't know. I know that's so weird and small, but the adults from child abuse, or the adults of child abuse, he always says a lot of good things. I think his name is Patrick Teehan. He always says a lot of good things. It's always very well organized and presented. It's always very respectful and dignified, which matters so much. And because there's straight up shit that I've been able to accept about myself that are not great things, purely because I heard someone talk about them in a way that was just, inclusive and accepting about, and they're going to respond this way. And I'm just like, yes, you are correct. And then I'm just like, holy shit, if you had said it any other way, I would have been like, that's not me. So anyway, it can be really important to just say something clearly. Assign it the meaning and the value that it has, the significance with words. Even if it's only in your thoughts. Because I don't, everyone's mind, like, I am going to be so interested. I think in like 40 years, everyone's going to be talking about what kind of mind they have, or memory or whatever, because like there are people who like don't have like the narrative chatty voice constantly. I do. Most people don't have photographic memory. I do. I have just stupid good like visualization, and that's like just visualization period is somewhat rare. I'm not. I don't give a fuck about my ego right now. I'm just saying, like, I only know how this mind is, right? And everybody has the exact same experience. So they only know the mind that they're living in. But I think it'll be really cool, and in probably like, I feel like it'll be like within my lifetime that like there will be a lot more attention focused on just how different people's memories work, or whether they have like the internal narrative, or whether they can see shit in their head. I have almost no auditory. Like it's not, I just pretty much, it's shit. The auditory memory is shit, which is hilarious considering I was a musician. But I'm extremely spatial and visual, and yeah. Okay, so anyway, something that happens with cptsd is that you kind of just, a big part of your life is just that your life experience day to day is that something taps into some version of yourself, or some memory, some place and time, and how you felt in that place and time. Something taps into that. And since there's a whole mechanism of trauma responses and protective devices assigned to that kind of rainy afternoon at that temperature, like it can be just like that, both random and specific, right? And inherently insignificant. But if that's what reminds you of a specific thing that happened between these family members when you were a kid, and it was at this house, and it was in this time of year, and it was raining, it might get in your head. And so that's a huge part of what CPTSD is, and what the lived experience of CPTSD is. And I am speaking for myself as well as for, I feel confident with saying that as a generalization, because I have heard a lot of, therapists who specialize in CPTSD that I learned a lot from speak specifically to that kind of thing, and everyone that, any content creator who talks about their own CPTSD, I have heard them speak about that experience, right? So that's a big like hallmark part of the lived experience of CPTSD, is that there's just a tinge of the winter of this age, and whatever that was for you, but something gets kind of stuck there, and it affects how your nervous system works. It affects your executive functioning, because it's affecting your nervous system and therefore your entire body. And there might be other like environmental triggers or whatever associated with that thing, right? And you end up like staying in that place, and you might start having like the kind of like thought processes that you had at that age and that time in that kind of circumstances, and like because like that's where you were at that time, because that's as far as you'd gotten in your timeline. But you're now, and that might be like 15 years on, And then you're sitting here now, and like for some reason you're tuning into a lot of like 15 years ago you. And then you might realize like, oh, it's because of this experience that I had in my life within like the last couple months, and it sent something off in me that had a whole chain reaction that like reminded me of a whole bunch of old thought processes. That's what cptsd is. And also, I will say so many fucking times, if you are autistic, cptsd and autism will fucking amplify each other, because they will shape to each other. They will take the same shape and mirror each other and amplify each other, and it makes getting out of your cptsd so much more painful. Not really so much more pain. It's just once you have to, it's so fucking codified and crystallized. But once you start figuring out how keys are shaped, then you get better at making keys. So something specifically that I wanted to talk about, as far as like changing your internal narrative, your self-talk and everything, something that I've started to try is that I'll try to just say a very specific just fact about like my childhood. Just very, calm tone, calm wording, not trying to like get a response or like emote anything, just factual. For example, that's something that I wrote recently about when I was a kid. Something that I like, specifically the wording of it was, we experienced food scarcity. Neutral, right? Like that's a safe, it's not trying to like pander to any emotion. We experienced food scarcity. And I was like, yeah, and I can just kind of sit in that space that here I am now, and I know that like me, in these ages and in these times and places, we experience food scarcity. And then I felt like I was having that thought. I was at an intersection in my car. I was having that thought process, and then I felt like something just like kind of entered in and clicked into place, that brought that shape full circle and brought me back to being centered in now, which was the whole point, or a big part of the point. And it was, but I'm not food scarce now. And I was like, shit. And again, it's just like how you say something and the language that you use matters so much. And so like I was able to sit in this like place of peace that is just like, we experience food scarcity. But then I was able to like finish that with, but I am responsible for my life now. I'm not a powerless child who like has limited options for how to respond. I'm trapped in the overall situation. And I sure do have a habit of feeling that way once I'm in any kind of relationship or job or anything that's legally binding, right? And I'm still learning how to be who I am now here through that. And that's something that you struggle with cptsd. And with a lot of trauma, and nobody who's helps you figure it out or grow past it. So hopefully this was helpful to whoever hung out with me. Thank you. But yeah, try that out. That is my suggestion. It's really good to state things clearly and acknowledge and be in that space of knowing like that's where you come from. Bring yourself back. Acknowledge that you're not here now. You're not there now, right? You're not 7, 10, whatever, with no food in the fridge and a, emotionally unstable parent. You're not there anymore. Because it gets tricky when you're doing a lot of like intentional work, intentional healing, and facing those memories and walking through them and figuring out like what needs to be addressed or what questions you need to answer that never got answered about those experiences. It's so important to do all that. I think this is a piece that I've been missing this whole year and a half, is walking myself back to now and me. And because it's easy to kind of just, too much of yourself stays over there, and you gotta bring yourself back. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm gonna finish my beer. I'm gonna lay on the floor and meditate. Oh my god, it's still so early! Oh! Man, that's something I love about winter. Holy fucking shit, it's still so early. I'm like cruising, I'm tired, I'm sleepy, I've had a bit to drink. And it's dark, and it's been dark. And I'm just like, shit, it's not 8 o'clock. Oh, it's the best. Bonus evening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your others. Cheers.